Thank you everybody for attending this journal club, which is focused around a paper that I'm Ava, that me and Lindsey published in the Aphasiology Journal in April. This paper is entitled The Role of AI in Supporting Written Communication in Aphasia, and it was a qualitative interview study. So we just wanted to do a really quick introduction to us as researchers. So first author on this paper is me, Ava Robinson. I am a graduate from the Master's Speech and Language Therapy course, and I graduated last year in August. And I'm currently working as a speech and language therapy assistant on an acute stroke ward.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsey Thiel. I'm a senior lecturer in speech and language therapy at Leeds Beckett University. I've been working there for 10 years and doing research into supporting people with aphasia, particularly with writing and teaching as well.
So just a little background to the research and kind of our motivation behind it. So this was actually my master's dissertation. I submitted it in May last year, and I wanted to participate in this research because I have a personal motivation. My dad lives with aphasia, so I have a great interest in this research area, and I really enjoy it. Um,
And I've got previous research in acquired dysgraphia. So for the last something like 12 years since my PhD, I have been evaluating different therapies and technologies to support people with acquired dysgraphia, so writing difficulties after a stroke. And I'm really interested in exploring people's lived experiences as well through qualitative research. So, writing and aphasia. Well, first of all, it's important to think about the process of writing that involves different steps. So you need lots of different skills to be able to write. So you need language skills, you need cognitive skills to be able to write something. But the steps are really setting intentions, thinking about what you want to write. You have to retrieve the right words. You have to choose the right words that you want to say. You need to be able to spell the word. And then afterwards, you need to be able to edit as well. And after that, if you're writing in sentences, so you need to be able to put words together into sentences. So you need syntactic skills, but then you need to be able to put sentences together into texts, which involves cohesion and coherence. So acquired dysgraphia, there are lots of different difficulties people can have with acquired dysgraphia, which is part of the profile of aphasia. So most people with aphasia do also have writing difficulties as well. But this includes reduced spelling accuracy. So that might be, and that might be something like in mild dysgraphia, an occasional letter that's missing or substituted. Or it could be not being able to write any letters of a word or just one letter of a word. Reduced text length and reduced word length as well, reduced overall cohesion, and also reduced writing speed. And that's something that people with aphasia often talk about. They say, I can still write, but it takes me a really long time, which can cause quite a lot of frustration. So I think thinking about the importance of writing, when I started doing research into writing, a lot of clinicians, a lot of speech and language therapists were saying to me, why would I focus on writing when we can focus on spoken language? Surely that's the more important modality to focus on for people with aphasia. With all of the people I've worked with aphasia over the years, actually, they've told me that writing is really important to them, particularly in the modern age where we're all sending each other text messages, WhatsApp messages, emails. It's expected, actually, that you can write, and that can be really difficult for people with aphasia when they can't. So it can really affect participation in social roles. So being able to stay in touch with family and friends, being able to work, being able to take part in education, even things being able to search for something online. So actually, it can have lots and lots of different kind of difficulties and impacts. So therapy goals in speech and language therapy can focus on enhancing participation, so supporting people to be able to take part in society, to be able to communicate with friends and family, but also improving areas of difficulty. So really focusing on that impairment level of being able to spell a word again, being able to retrieve a word within the context of social communication. So yes, speech and language therapists have a role in impairment-based therapies, but also supporting the implementation of compensatory strategies. So you can support somebody by helping them to write a word again through asking them to copy and recall words, for example, or through providing strategies and working on strategies with the clients. So a small amount of evidence has shown that through quantitative methods mainly, that there are benefits to functional writing. There's a small number of studies. I think there's something now like somewhere between 20 and 30 studies focusing on assistive writing technologies for people with aphasia. These are usually grouped into most of the studies, even though there are some other types of technologies. Most of the studies have either been focusing on word recognition software, so where you talk into a phone or into a laptop and it types for you. The outcomes of these studies have shown improvements to social activity, social networks, structure of discourse, production of appropriate words, and informativeness of messages. And then there are those studies that have evaluated technologies like spell check and predictive writing, where you start typing and the words are predicted. And those studies have shown changes to spelling accuracy, writing speed, grammar, use of verbs and function words, and editing ability. As I say, like a small body of research so far. There's limited qualitative research though, and qualitative research is obviously important for understanding people's experiences and knowing whether they're likely to carry on using technologies. So we really want to know, what do people find are the facilitators and barriers, and do they find them useful, and which technologies do they want to be using? So a study that I did with a colleague, Paul Conroy, in 2022 was a qualitative study exploring people with aphasia's experiences of writing. And within that, they spoke about a lot of experiences, but they also did say that they valued assistive technologies, that they used apps, and interestingly, they'd usually come across apps and software on their own without anyone recommending them, without speech and language therapists or other professionals recommending them. It had been through friends. And they found writing on computers easier in general, which was also supported by Shellen and colleagues in 2017. So back to Ava.
So I just wanted to give a really quick overview on artificial intelligence. So what artificial intelligence actually is are computational algorithms that can complete tasks that usually require human intelligence. And the way that they learn how to produce and understand human language is they actually analyze human language and they extract the features of it. And this is a process called machine learning. Um, and within these massive algorithms called large language models, which are what chatbots use to comprehend and produce human-like utterances, machine learning is implemented so that ChatGPT or Copilot can understand what we input into it, and then it can respond to us like a human as well. And chatbots like ChatGPT or Copilot are types of generative AI. And when we speak about generative AI, it means that AI that can create things. So it can create images, it can create videos, and it can create text. Obviously, in this study, creating text was our main focus. So there's been some research into how AI can assist with aphasia, but the majority of it has been related to aphasia diagnosis. So AI is found to be able to identify the pathological features in speech samples that signify aphasia is present, and it's been able to distinguish between people who don't have aphasia and people who do have aphasia. It's also been able to identify the different subtypes of aphasia. So Kong et al. Found that it can differentiate between fluent and non-fluent aphasia. And then, sorry if I pronounce any of these names wrong, by the way. Rezai et al. Found that it can distinguished between the difference of primary progressive aphasia subtypes with 97.9% accuracy. So it's shown great promise here in its diagnostic ability. There's also a small amount of research into how it can facilitate rehabilitation of aphasia, so improving the actual writing difficulties themselves. And Barbara et al. Found that there was some encouraging results for a software that could give feedback on people with aphasia's performance during picture naming tasks, which is one of the tasks that we do use when trying to rehabilitate aphasia to help with word finding. So in terms of its generative AI's application to spoken communication, it's been found that when examples of circumlocution. So when we say circumlocution, we mean talking around a word. So we all do this. So when there's a word that's on the tip of your tongue and you can't find it, you start describing different features of that word. So for example, if you're trying to find the word sofa, you might say, oh, you find it in the living room, it's soft, you sit on it. You might say the color of your own sofa at home. All these things that we use to cue ourselves into a word, that's circumlocution. So when ChatGPT has provided examples of these from people with aphasia, it has been found to be able to identify their target words. And Kim et al. Found that when they actually fine-tuned a chatbot to do this, based on barriers that they identified to accurate word prediction, this chatbot actually performed more advanced chatbots. So this suggests that if we train AI specifically to help with word finding for people with aphasia, it might have promising implications. And then Bailey et al. In 2024, they created an aphasia-specific app called Aphasia GPT, and they participants used this and tested it and saw how they thought it worked. And they saw great potential in how it could maybe aid their word retrieval and also their sentence formulation during functional tasks. So when we say functional tasks, we mean tasks that have a specific target. So for example, emailing a friend and asking to go for a coffee, or emailing a lawyer to speak about, I don't know, a company to complain or something like that. But they did note that it couldn't help with all processes involved in discourse, so all processes involved in conversation. In terms of how generative AI could support with written communication, there is limited research in relation to this. Two quite recent studies. So one is Allen et al. In 2025. So they did a single case study, and their participant had a goal of writing an autobiography. And they produced text using both ChatGPT and without ChatGPT. And the text that the participant produced using ChatGPT were found to be free of syntactic. So syntactic is grammatical errors, and they were free of semantic errors. So semantics is when words are similar to each other. So semantic errors are when you might call a lion a tiger, for example, because they're similar. And they were also free of punctuation and pronoun errors. The sentences that were produced using ChatGPT also were more complex and concise. So when their participant produced sentences without ChatGPT, these sentences tended to be longer, but they were less concise. And their participant was able to achieve their goal of writing an autobiography using ChatGPT. And they expressed that it helped with their word finding and their recollection of their life events, as well as researching different topics they wanted to include in their autobiography and combining their ideas into a cohesive whole. And then after this study, they actually continued to use it to write songs. Another 2025 study worked with people with aphasia to identify the barriers to spoken and written communication and also to technology and AI use. They then used their knowledge of these barriers to develop 4 systems to target them. And these systems were one that generated images based on users' prompts, one that generated sentences based on keywords inputted by the user, one that checked the accuracy of whole sentences produced by the user, and one that generated diary-like entries of participants' life events. So the main advantages that they found of these 4 systems were that they allowed greater diversity of expression. So that means that AI allowed access to a wider vocabulary, and participants were actually able to use a larger variety of words within their text when they were using some of these systems. They also allowed for easier sentence construction, improved word finding, and better organization of fragmented speech or writing. So again, that cohesion of all those different ideas that participants had into an understandable piece of text. But despite these positives, AI, all of the systems actually did make contextual errors within their output. So this means that sometimes they used words that were not relevant to the intended use of the text. And AI also sometimes misunderstood participants' speech when they were using voice recognition to input their prompts. Back to Lindsey.
So now I'm going to talk through the rationale why we decided to do this study. So we decided it was going to be an MSc project, and I was delighted when Ava came forward and said she would like to do it. So previous research has highlighted then, just to summarise, that writing is important for people with aphasia, for many people with aphasia in their everyday lives. We know that assistive technologies can support written communication, self-management, which is really important. So in the UK, people don't get much speech and language therapy, so it's really important to find approaches where people can actually be supporting themselves in their own homes as well, and in achieving goals. So we know that any evidence is scarce, looking at people's experiences of using chatbots. And we also know that we should be consulting people with aphasia on their self-management and therapy approaches. So the aim of the study was to contribute to the overall understanding of people with aphasia's experiences of using technology and AI to support writing. So the research questions were: what do people with aphasia report about their experiences of writing difficulties post-stroke? So we wanted to ask participants how they feel generally, and how writing is impacting them, and what's helped. So what supported people with aphasia with their writing? So what else is supporting, and are there technologies already that are helping? And what are people with aphasia's perceptions on using an AI chatbot to support their writing during functional tasks? So just a list of some of the demographic and information of the participants. We had 6. So just to emphasize, this was a small scale study. It was a master's project, so it had to be done within a year. But also it was useful. We hadn't done any research like this before, so we wanted to do something small scale that we could build on afterwards. So all of our participants, if you could go back, Ava.
Sorry.
Okay. So we recruited through our university clinic. We've got a university speech and language therapy clinic where we see people with aphasia in our university. Everybody had to have post-stroke aphasia. They were all speakers of English. They had self-identified goals related to writing. There was nobody with severe impairment of cognition or auditory comprehension, because we wanted them to be able to take part in the tasks on the day. They all had mild to moderate aphasia. That wasn't the aim, but that's what happened in the recruitment. But we had people with mild to severe dysgraphia. So we had one person in the study who could only write the first letter of each word, who we described as having severe dysgraphia. 4 were male and 2 were female. They were 37 to 67 years of age, so quite a young group of people with aphasia. And there were 5 to 17 years post-stroke. So this was very much based on people with chronic aphasia that had been living with aphasia for a long time, and that's how they'd made their way to our clinic. So next slide, please, Ava. We held a 3-hour workshop in the university. The workshop was supported by, so it was me and 2 other members of staff, and there was another MSc student there. We started off the workshop by presenting a PowerPoint on what is AI and what are the different uses of AI, and showing Copilot and describing Copilot and what it can do. We wanted to concentrate on a technology that was freely available to people that they would be using. Participants were given 45 minutes to complete 4 writing tasks. So this was just practice tasks, and we were working with them and showing them how to use Copilot. So the aim was to come out with these different messages. So a catch-up message to a friend, a message to a small business about service, a recipe for a friend, and a letter to MP. So local government representative, a congressman, I think is the, I'm just trying to think what the equivalent would be in the US, about an issue of concern. And then they did a writing assessment. We compared with and without Copilot. We're not presenting that here. Actually, I can just quickly summarize the findings of that in case anyone's interested. It was really, as might be expected, that the Copilot messages were significantly more accurate. They were more efficiently written, so more words per minute, and they were rated more highly by raters in social validity ratings. And then this is the bit we're talking about here, which is we did some semi-structured interviews by either a therapist or an MSc student. So each participant went to a separate room with the person interviewing them. It was just one-to-one, and the interviews took something between 30 minutes and an hour. And they were asked a range of questions about their experience of having acquired dysgraphia, and about what supports them in writing, how they found it to produce messages using Copilot, what they found easy, what they found difficult, those types of questions. So here's an example. I mean, I guess that a lot of people will have seen and used Copilot, but this is what you start with. So where you fill in the box something, you put in some kind of command, some kind of prompt, and then you come out with a message afterwards. So you might write something like, here goes an example: write a letter to my doctor asking about my prescription. And in the case of the people with aphasia we were working with, they might write something like, letter prescription, and that was enough to generate messages. And then you come out with a response. And sometimes it's exactly what you're expecting. And I think, as we'll all know, sometimes it's not. And sometimes you'd need to be editing those prompts, and it can be quite frustrating. So yeah, that's what, so we'd be giving these kind of screenshots to the participants. So in terms of analysis, we used Brown and Clark's reflexive thematic analysis, which was inductive. So the codes and themes came from the data. We liked this because it values the experiences of the analyzer in interpreting the data. We very much saw ourselves as part of the research and influencing the findings in the interview process and in the analysis process. And it allows in-depth reporting of participants' experiences. And I think we probably won't get time to go through the findings if I spend too long talking about this. So I'm just going to very quickly go through that in case anyone hasn't done Brown and Clark's thematic analysis. So you start with familiarizing yourself with the data through transcribing and reading through. Then you move on to coding. So you'll add some code labels to the data of anything that's meaningful related to the research question. And then you will generate your initial themes by looking for patterns in the codes, and then you'll develop and review themes further. And then you will define and name themes, and then writing up, which is still a part of the analysis, where you're still, I guess, making decisions about the data as you're going, and still defining themes and merging themes, and then using anonymized quotations as well throughout.
Yeah, it's a really iterative process. So like me and Lindsey had loads of different chats when I'd made themes, and then we'd gone through and thought, oh, does that really represent what we found? So it's a really great process if you want to get really in-depth analysis.
Yeah, and it was really important for us, the reflexivity. So we would be talking about our reflections all the time in meetings throughout, which was really important because of our own experiences that we were bringing to it.
So now I'll just go through our findings as quickly as I can because there's a lot, as always, with qualitative research. There's quite a lot of quotes and stuff like that, which are great. We'd love to highlight as many as we can. So we derived two main themes from our data. The first theme was working towards social participation through writing, and the second theme was interweaving traditional and technological support. So within each of these themes, we had four sub-themes, and I'll go through each one of those separately. So our first theme, working towards social participation through writing, and our first sub-theme was writing ability was impacted by stroke. So all of our participants reported that their stroke had a negative impact on their writing. And this took a variety of forms. So this was either through motor function, so of impacting their dominant hand, so they physically could not write handwrite anymore, or this was because it impacted their word finding, their spelling, or it reduced the pace of their writing. So this is quite in line with previous research. And participant 6 particularly highlighted that in the acute phases of their stroke, they couldn't write at all. And participant 6 said that even 12 or 13 years later, just writing one sentence can be really difficult. Our second sub-theme was that writing ability had improved. So all of our participants also noted that their writing has changed over time. And again, this took a variety of forms. So participants noted improvements in their handwriting. So participant 3 spoke about writing birthday cards and saying that it took time for him to actually be able to hold a pencil and do handwriting. They also noted improvements in speed and improvements in word finding over time as well. But they also did note that this progression is slow, and this is also in line with previous research. So our third sub-theme within this theme was motivation to practice. So all of our participants had positive views of, and they showed a great willingness to practice as well. And this was again in a variety of different forms. So some of our participants hand wrote diaries, either to keep track of events that they got planned or to recount things that had happened. Some of our participants actually avoided the use of assistive technology to help with their spontaneous recall. And one of our participants actually participated in the current study as a way to practice her writing. Participants also noted the benefit of speech and language therapy and attributed it to supporting the improvements that they've made in their writing. And I really love this quote from participant 6 because it really does just sum up why speech and language therapists do what we do. She said that speech and language therapy has done massive things for me because it's a basis of me to get out my intelligence. Yeah, so it's just a really lovely quote and makes me love my job even more. So sub-theme 4 was communicating and connecting through writing. So one of the main things that our participants discussed was using writing to keep in contact with people. So a lot of the time this was keeping in contact with their family and friends through, like I said, handwriting cards, through social media, or by using text or email. So participant 1 posts on social media about her daily life, and participant 2 said that she posted some pictures and adds captions to them. For example, it's sunny today. Participants also spoke about using writing to complete their formal social roles. So, for example, contacting their housing agents or their lawyers. They also classed contacting the current researchers as formal communication, and companies to complain. So moving on to theme 2, interweaving traditional and technological support. So I think that the key word here is interweaving. So no two participants solely use tech and solely use traditional support. And I think that's really important to emphasize because in the current age of loads of new technologies coming out, and I was all doing research on how new technologies can support, we also need to acknowledge that non-technological support is also really important, and we need to think about how they can work together to support our patients best. So our first sub-theme within this is non-technological support is important. So like I said, all of our participants use some form of non-technological strategy. And again, a lot of the time this was in the form of support from family and friends. So family and friends read over texts or emails or letters that people had written and checked for errors before they were then sent off or used for their intended purpose. But participants did communicate that they had varying levels of support, and this often depended on conversation partner or the complexity of a message. So, for example, participant 5 said that her husband would look over her text if it was to the researchers, but not if it was to a friend. So you can see this fluctuation in need, support needs depending on whether it's for formal communication or for non-formal communication. And participant 1 spoke about how her friends helps her to write messages when the topic of the message is quite complex. Participants also use compensatory measures to support with their writing. So this could either be by using their non-dominant hand if they had a motoric effect, impact on their dominant hand, by purposefully keeping sentences shorter and more direct, and also by purposefully writing slower to aid the word recall or sentence construction. Our second sub-theme within this main theme was assistive technology is useful. So all of our participants completed some of their writing on devices. So this could be iPads, laptops, phones, and they used a range of assisted technologies to help them do this. So word prediction software, participant 4 highlighted that this makes texting faster than handwriting, and participant 2 used this for writing emails. Spell check, participant 5 used this for writing emails. And voice dictation software, so this is where you speak into the device and it writes what you're speaking. And all of our participants who use phones and iPads also used emojis. And again, this is a lovely quote from participant 6. It said, in one picture, it says everything you want to say. So you can see here how visuals can really support that lexical difficulty when using smart devices. So our third sub-theme within this theme is the initial wow factor of AI. So most of our participants were new to AI. One had actually used it before, but all of our participants were impressed by it, and they had some lovely quotes to do this. Enlightening, brilliant, and they really liked it. So they particularly noted that AI produced large responses from short prompts. So, like Lindsey was saying with Copilot, inputting participant 4 only inputted Dr. Pill's epilepsy in order for Copilot to produce a relevant letter about his prescription to his doctor. So those kind of more broken prompts that might be produced by people with aphasia, AI was really good at responding to them and still fulfilling the intended purpose of the text. They also noted that AI included language subtleties. So this was either in the form of social subtleties, so putting at the end of an email, thank you for your understanding and patience, but it was also grammatical subtleties, so including these words that we call function words, which don't really carry much meaning on their own, but they make up the grammatical structure of a sentence. So is or but are the ones that participant 4 particularly highlighted. Most of our participants said that they would recommend AI, and most believe that it would support them in their daily life and had an intention to use it in the future. However, participant 5 set conditions on this, saying that if her support she receives from her family weren't there, then she would use AI, but if they were there, then she wouldn't really tend to use it. She also said she would only really recommend AI to her younger friends. Participants also highlighted that they needed to edit AI's output at times. So this was for a number of reasons, either to change American spelling to British spelling, align AI's tone with their own personal tone, correct some of AI's grammatical errors. The grammatical error in particular that was spoken about was because AI didn't understand the participant's prompt. So it said he was trying to write a message to a friend to plan the friend's birthday, but it used the wrong tense or something like that. To remove irrelevant words, so like I said, using words that are not relevant to the intended use. And participants highlighted that this editing did take time, but it didn't impact their intention to use AI. And participant 4 described these edits as tiny. And participant 3 said that in 5 years he thinks AI will be perfect. So they showed a good optimism for using AI. Our final theme within this main theme was AI can help achieve writing goals. So participants made several suggestions for the potential use of AI. For example, writing letters to their doctors or to companies to complain, writing invitations to friends, or writing general social messages. And they anticipated that it could increase their writing speed, and help with meeting the expectations of their own writing. So if they have a high expectation of their own writing, which participant 3 did, he said that he thought AI was superb in helping to meet this expectation. But that these expectations also fluctuated. So he said that if he was talking to a friend or if he was tired, then this is less prominent. So again, that shows that fluctuation of support needs. And they also spoke about how AI could continue to could supplement their pre-existing strategies. So, for example, adding to their pre-existing word banks by extracting words AI had used, or by creating letter templates that could be saved and used in the future. Participants also did emphasize that they would benefit from practice using AI. So one of our participants didn't realize you needed to put a command within your prompt to instruct Copilot to do something. And inexperience with technology also caused some difficulties accessing AI. Participant 6 also placed conditions on her AI use, saying that she would use it when she was not fatigued, and she would recommend it with the caveat that it's only used for good, noting that she'd heard negative things about AI first, which I think is also something we really need to highlight because there's so much attention about AI in the media at the moment. It's something we need to consider. What have people heard about AI already? How are we going to discuss that in practice, and if we want to recommend it to someone? So Lindsay's just going to give you a quick summary.
Back to me. So I'm just going to summarise. There's quite a lot there. So going back to those research questions, what do people with aphasia report about their experiences of writing difficulties post-stroke? Well, they emphasise again what we know already, that acquired dysgraphia is chronic and it requires long-term management. So even if they've had speech and language therapy working on the dysgraphia, it's something that they're living with and they need to keep practicing, keep working on and finding strategies. But the writing is crucial for fulfilling social roles. What supported people with aphasia with their writing? Well, they spoke a lot about family and friends, but also different technologies. And what are people with aphasia's perspective on using AI chatbot to support their writing during functional tasks? Well, it was generally positive as you've just heard. So some really positive comments there, particularly the inclusion of social language to support social communication and participation, particularly useful for formal communication, as I think many of us find actually it can be so useful, can't it, for helping to draft a difficult letter. But that there are some accessibility and editing difficulties, but that didn't hold them back and didn't put them off using it.
We also found some really interesting things in relation to identity and context. So, as I've spoken about, the fluctuation in support needs depending on the context of a message, so the message complexity, or the conversation partner, the person that's receiving the message, or fatigue levels as well. So, it suggests that strategy use is mediated by this context, and it highlights the multifactorial nature of dysgraphia and how there's so many different things that can influence someone's ability to write, or that what they need to support them, how they feel about their writing. And this has implications for self-management as well. So if we're wanting to facilitate self-management, if individuals know what works for them and they know their support needs and they know what they want to do, they're better able to identify and cater to these needs. And this fluctuation also implies that different identities are assumed through different social roles. So, for example, not needing someone to check over your writing when you're talking to a friend implies that that our participants assumed a different social role, a different identity within a friend's social role as compared to a formal social role, such as emailing a lawyer. And this supports previous studies into identity by Shadden and Egan and Tobin et al. In 2019. Participants' mention of speech and language therapy also emphasizes that the right support um, may be crucial for allowing expression of this identity and for conversation partners to accurately assume competence. So what that means is to accurately assume someone's intelligence and someone's ability and not just make assumptions based on the fact that they might have language difficulties. The expectation and ownership of writing style that participants shown, so expecting themselves to have a high standard of writing, supports the ability to read and write is linked to identity, and this was again found in a previous study in 2017, so it supports that. But participants with aphasia have often been left out of identity studies, and this is something that we're going to suggest, but it would be a really interesting topic for future research to explore. So our clinical implications of this research, so it supports the continued use of technology in therapy, both assisted technology and AI. And it suggests that AI could be a beneficial compensatory measure for writing difficulties and that it could facilitate self-management. So I know that in the UK, the NHS long-term plan has a big emphasis on self-management and how we can support patients to do this in order to support themselves at home and also to help with resourcing pressures that I'm not sure about in the US, but I know that in the UK that's definitely something we need to be considering. We also need to be considering someone's prior knowledge and experiences with technology. So we shouldn't just be using this as a blanket strategy because some people may have less experience with tech. They may not actually want to use tech if they don't really they haven't used it in the past. They might just not want to use it. So that's something we really need to consider. We also need to consider that additional resources might be beneficial to help someone get the most out of their AI use. So, for example, using word banks alongside AI so that they can use the word banks to help with their prompting and writing prompts into AI. We also need to provide training both for patients and clinicians as well as students who might be using these sorts of strategies in the future. We also need to be having ethical discussions about AI and its impact on the environment, how this may outweigh its benefits, how we can comply with data laws and privacy protection. We also need to make sure we're complying with local guidelines. So for us, it would be the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, and they've just released the AI guidelines. So we need to be making sure that we're complying with these when we're using AI and assistive technology. We also need to keep in mind socioeconomics and bear in mind that there is health inequalities in this sense because some people might not have access to high-speed Wi-Fi or devices to use these technologies on, and we don't want to be emphasizing these health inequalities by just recommending them without considering someone's social background.
So directions for future research. Well, we've got a few ideas and actually we've started doing sort of planning some of these things, but we think we need more evaluation of perceptions of AI in the longer term after people have been using it a lot at home. We also want to evaluate AI use in terms of quantitative outcomes in the long term. Investigate AI in more people with moderate to severe aphasia, because as you've seen, the people in the study mainly had milder aphasia. Address potential implications of AI on identity of people with aphasia, and to continue involving people with aphasia in any kind of development of apps, software and management strategies, co-producing research with them. So that's it. That's all of our slides. Thank you very much. Any questions? Shall we close the slides?
Yeah, I'm going to close the slides because I can't see anyone when I've got the slides open. So
hi Heather. just seen a question from Heather. Hello. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I can start over. So I'm Heather. I'm the speech language pathologist here at UT. So thank you. This was so wonderful. And this is such meaningful research. I've worked with people with aphasia for over 20 years, and just all the new technology, it's just kind of like a fire hose for them. So being able to help them decide what is like the most appropriate. I'm curious, did you find any unexpected improvements in metacognitive skills like self-monitoring, self-cueing, error detection?
We didn't measure any of that, actually. We didn't. I think so. From what? Oh, don't mind. Do you mind if I jump in, Ava? Is that all right?
No, that's fine. You know
you can
the
add
participants
afterwards.
better
Yeah.
than me, so.
So I think from what the research shows, and from talking to people with aphasia, it reduces that burden, doesn't it, Ava? And I think you've thought about this quite a lot.
I have.
Do you want to? The cognitive burden.
Yeah.
Of AI.
Yeah. Or technologies in general, that if it's helping with one aspect of the writing process, it's going to give them more kind of resources, executive functioning to focus on the other aspects.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're finding.
Yeah, one thing that was in the paper, which we weren't able to include in the presentation, was how it does suggest that when you can use AI, the fact that our participants edited its output, it suggests that if AI produces most of the text itself, it allows them to put that cognitive load into the editing itself rather than the construction of the message.
Yeah, what a great help and like transfer of that energy of resources, right? To where it really kind of needs to be. One other quick question, did communication partners just by chance notice any meaningful changes in participation or independence?
We didn't look at that because this was so small. It was based on just one workshop, and the interviews happened at the same time. But these are really good ideas, and I'm glad you're saying them, because in the next study, the study that I'm working on at the moment is with a Masters of Research student, where we're actually going to evaluate AI, so a training package, training AI and evaluating through quantitative measures as well as qualitative measures of the actual outcomes after doing that for several weeks. So I think that's something to really actually picking up on carers' perspectives will be a really good idea in that.
Yeah, that is a really good idea.
Yeah, because as you probably already know, that often our perceptions and our participants' perceptions are very different than the communication partners' perceptions, because they perceive it as, oh my gosh, they're getting really good, or I'm not seeing really any difference, when they're like, oh my gosh, I'm communicating so much better. So I'm just curious like what that would look like. But actually, it's wonderful.
Yeah, but I was just thinking to other studies. So the studies I've done with using other assistive writing technologies like predictive writing software, they have actually commented on that. Even though we didn't interview carers, the people with aphasia themselves have said, oh, my daughter said, what a great email. So through their, they've explained themselves that people have said that to them, so that actually they're getting that positive feedback, like, I can't believe you're writing this kind of message. So
and that's why we do what we do, right? So that's great.
Definitely. Oh, thanks so much for those questions. Great questions.
Well, thank you for sharing your personal experiences as well. I know we've got some other folks here that might have some great questions that have personal experiences too, but thank you so much. I'd love to keep in touch with you both.
Yeah, that'd be
great. That'd be great. Any other questions from anyone? Saying before, I'm in an attic room and we're having a heat wave in the UK, and we're not prepared for it. So sorry about being so sweaty. We're just never ready for it in this country.
Yeah, I was listening earlier. They were saying that everybody was kind of hanging out in shopping plazas and big malls where they don't typically go because there's no AC there. Oh, and what time is it there for you guys?
It's 10 to 7 now.
Yeah, but
it should be cooler.
But the heat of the day in the UK starts at like 3, and I think it goes until like 6. Like, it's not like what you'd normally think is the heat of the day. So
no.
Well, don't come to Texas if you don't like it.
I can imagine. We don't even know what heat is until we've been there, do we? I guess.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone, or even comments or anything that anyone can relate to from your own experiences? Or I think we rammed quite a lot of information in there, so probably didn't leave much to ask about, did we?
If there are no more questions and no comments, I would like to thank you for coming and presenting at our journal club. And I hope that we will, be in touch, and maybe you will present to us your next publication.
Yeah, when we've developed an app, that's when we're coming back, isn't it, Eva? When we've developed an app that's going to support people with aphasia, we'll come back then.
Yeah.
That's
the goal.
great. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
I will then leave the meeting and close this for everybody. Thank you very much. And one reminder that physical therapists who want to get a continuing education credit for this journal club, I posted the link to the form that you have to fill out in the meeting chat. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks for having us, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.